We're very lucky today to have Rob Eldridge and Yasmin Kilsall here to present to us on Wallan Wallan Regional Park, Regional Parkland, I'm sorry, perhaps. The Rob is a former Mitchell Shire Councillor. He'll be doing the bulk of the presenting today. He's worked through the Wallan Environment Group since about 2010, so putting in the hard yards, that's 16 years of non-stop advocacy, and it's we have to say hopefully coming to fruition, where it's as we're here in an election year perhaps, so there's a bit more attentiveness in the general world. And we also have Yasmin Kilsall here, who is currently, now I've got her proper name, environmental planning lead at Merri Creek Management Committee. And I should say that it's one of the Merri Creek Management Committee's great strengths is that they have environmental planning foregrounded in their whole approach to things. Yasmin's an ecologist. She's also previously worked at the Victoria National Parks Association, and she's set up or helped set up the Victoria ESA, the Environmental, get it together, Adrian, Environmental Consultants Association of Victoria, ECAV, amongst her many strategic moves in her grassland warrior life. So I will hand over to Rob and Yasmin. With questions at the end, perhaps put them in the chat. I'm sure if you want to, you can just plain old interrupt if it's of cracking urgency and so on. But I will and yeah, stay on for the general meeting at the end of this after a 10-minute break at the end. Anyway, over to you, Rob. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Adrian, and thank you everybody for attending tonight. I'm pleased to be able to present what has become a passion of mine over the last 16 years. Just picking up on the questions, if you've got a burning question that you'd like to ask, and I know when I'm looking at a presentation, if I don't ask it when I think of it, I don't remember it. So if you get one of those, I'm quite happy to stop. I'm trying to aim at more what you're interested in, so quite a few slides. I don't intend to go through all of them, but if you want a particular slant on things, or you want to ask questions, go for it, because I want to make sure that at the end of this you come away with the knowledge you need to know. So once again, thank you. So Wallan Wallan Regional Park, that's a beautiful photo there, I must say. And I don't know who took it, but yeah, it's a good photo. That was taken from the train heading towards Wallan, and that was on a normal winter's rainfall event, and that's Mount Fraser in the background. So that's a volcanic cone. So that's become almost the standard bearer for our introductions for the park, because it actually illustrates very well the mesh between the volcanic cones and the wetlands.
Rob, I'm just having a bit of trouble moving this forward. The oh, here we are. Hang on. Right. We've introduced you, so I'll move you forward again.
Yep.
Hang on. All right, great. Got it. Cool. We've done a bit of an acknowledgement of country, so I'll move it forward again. There we are.
Okay, so I thought I'd start with the vision, because one of the things over the years you forget is that people actually need to share the vision to actually be able to understand the significance of what you're trying to achieve. So it's the basic vision is connecting people with the nature on a regional scale, and that's where people can escape what is becoming hugely dense populated areas where we've got 300 to 400 square metres blocks being large blocks, and the Victorian Planning Authority are planning by numbers, and that's by numbers of houses. So there is very much a need for nature places, and also we need to protect the wildlife. Hern Swamp, which I'll get to later, is a wetland of national significance, and along the Merri, it provides a biolink across to the Goulburn with the creek lines in the Wallan area. It's also a place for the community to meet and bond, and I think just getting out and being at one with nature is undervalued. I'm sure not by the people in this presentation, but definitely I think it would help a lot of people and have mental health benefits as well. We'll also connect with the wild places across the state. I mentioned the biolinks. The biolinks would come up the Merri, and it would link across the creeks in Wallan to the upper Maribyrnong catchment, and also to the Plenty Valley catchment, across to the Broken, the Goulburn, and maybe further west than that, so towards Eppalock. So it is a biolink at the moment. I know that because I'm on the headwaters of one of the creeks, and we get wildlife moving through. One of the biggest things for the vision was, it's a passion of mine, is the mitigation of the effects of climate change. So it's a cooling refuge from the heat. We all know that as we get hard surfaces and concrete and roofs, that we end up with a heat island. So one of the visions is that this will act to ameliorate the effects of climate change. Okay, just a quick background. I won't go right through it. We've been campaigning for 16 years, hundreds of Green Hill tours, and Adrian's already mentioned he's been up on there, and I know for sure Jasmine has.
I'm in that photo, I can see.
Yeah, that's a good photo because are you in there? You are, yeah, good. So at the end of all that, we managed to get on the agenda a commitment from the government to a feasibility study to look at the potential for a park up here. That feasibility study was completed in May 2022 and released, I think it was 2024, 2025, a lot later than it should have been, and pretty much was driven, I think, by freedom of information from an Age reporter, which led to the public release of it. So one of the things I want to highlight here is that this hasn't been a one-trick pony show, because there are so many people involved in this over the years. Merri Creek Management Committee, Wallan Environment Group, Mitchell Shire Environment Advisory Committee was heavily involved, Friends of Merri Creek, and Nature Glenelg Trust. There's one there, Mitchell Shire Council. So it's been lobbied by various people on a broad front for many, many years. And as you mentioned, Adrian, we are hopeful that we're getting closer to a resolution. Okay, I'll just touch on after the feasibility study and the release, and I mentioned the groups before. We had many people working positively towards this outcome, but it wasn't as coordinated as it possibly could be. So sometime late last year, we talked about having a regional park alliance, and that's basically the 4 environment groups that it covers off on. It's the Friends of Merri Creek, Merri Creek Management Committee, Wallan Environment Group, and BEAM, which is the Mitchell Shire, not Mitchell Environment Group. So formerly Broadford Environment Action. So that's underway at the moment, and we're meeting on a fortnightly basis, and we sort of have an agenda for what we're trying to achieve, and I'll cover off on what that is next towards the end. Okay, I thought I'd touch base, and you really led into it well, Adrian, because not many people know the environment up here around Wallan and a little bit further south through Beveridge. So part of Wallan Wallan is the wetlands, and Wallan Wallan itself is a Aboriginal name for large circular place of water, and it refers to the extensive Wallan network of swamps that dominate the circular plain below Pretty Sally Hill. And if you've ever driven up Pretty Sally Hill and looked back, it's like an amphitheatre of hills around the entrance of all the creeks into the Merri. So it gathers a lot of water and retains it because of larval flows. Okay, so what we're trying to do with features, the Wallan Wallan wetlands covered here, we have, and I think I can, not used to Zoom now, but yeah, you can see the top left-hand corner there, Strathaired Creek, which is along the eastern ridge of Old Sydney Road, and that's got some great remnant trees and habitat. You go down to the Burrumbullock, which is the old Hannah's Swamp, and that's being protected on its southern boundary by the PSP, which is a precinct structure plan, which covers northwest Beveridge, and we're hopeful that the rest of it will be covered as well. Originally, the Strathaired Creek ran into Burrumbullock, but it was diverted during the agricultural times of probably the 30s and 40s. So we're looking at restoration of that through Burrumbullock as an in-stream swamp, and also to provide parkland along Merri Creek and Calcallo Creeks down the west bank there. And as I mentioned before, we have Hearn Swamp. So it's on a very wet winter, all of those swamps are active. So Hearn Swamp, in its original state, covered about 600 hectares when it was full, and it held water for up to 6 months. So it was long enough that it actually created its own environment and wildlife. So, and we still get a lot of waterfowl and ibis and swans even in the wetlands there as they fill up. It contains stony knoll grasslands. I always have trouble with that. Stony knoll grasslands, plains grasslands, woodlands, and seasonal herbaceous wetlands, which is fairly obvious. And you'll see from that slide that there's a housing estate right in the middle of Hearn Swamp. You know, that's obviously, we can't do much about that now, but you can see behind that, that's a normal rain event, and surrounding that development almost is the old Hearn Swamp. So there's still enough there to create a viable wetland. So just a few photos of it. Yarra Valley Water experimental wetland restoration area. So in the middle of Hearn Swamp is the Yarra Valley Water treatment plant, and that's got a 1K buffer around it, which you know, they've been very supportive of the whole process. So they actually tried to restore some of the wetland in 2018, and they actually had swans move in and nest, and that was just over a short period. So it's amazing how quickly the aquatics and riparian zone regenerate, and to have swans there is amazing. So, yep.
Rob, I didn't get to tell you this actually, but I was thinking that maybe the sketch at the bottom right-hand corner there is actually a similar scene as to what is in the photo from like the hill, the line of the hills, it's sort of in dark on the edge of the swamp is quite similar. And it's
It is,
from the
isn't it?
train line which runs in that location. Like we can't see the train line in that Yarra Valley water photo, but it would be fairly close to the same
Yeah,
location.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah, the Yarra Valley water, as we're looking out, you can see Mount Fraser in the background. I think that's it, or might be Bald Hill. But the train line's behind you. But when that Hern Swamp photo, not photo, but picture was drawn, that was before they drained the swamp. They actually dynamited Merri Creek, where the lava flow blocked the creek, and that's resulted in rather than 6 months of inundation, it probably 2 weeks now. So because it all drains out through to the Merri. So, but yeah, it does look very similar. They put the railway, God knows why, they put the railway right through the middle of Hern Swamp. So Burrumbullock, I mentioned it before, and this is a great photo of it. So around about the same time as the photo of Hern Swamp. This was in 2022 in October. It was taken from Green Hill, obviously with a fairly long lens. And for those who don't know Green Hill, it's as you come into Wallan on the right, you can see the footy grounds, etc. Well, the hill rising up from there, it's actually a volcanic cone. And that's Green Hill. So it's a favourite place to take people to get a perspective on the size of the park. So that what that shows is that in a rain event where the developer said that that Hannah's Swamp never fills, we have it full to the point where the old Strathayr Creek outflow can be seen there. So yeah, that's a really powerful photo. So the second and third and fourth swamps in the wetlands. So Mead Swamp, if you've driven along the northern into Wallan during winter, chances are you've probably driven through some water on the northern. That's swamp, and that you can see from the right-hand photo that Mead Swamp is where the Strathayr Creek meets the highway and crosses across there, just below Green Hill and Mount Fraser. So, and Camula Swamp is about 100 hectares southeast of Hern Swamp, and it's on the Merri Creek as well. So that's also a biosite, a state biosite. Any questions so far? Good. We'll go on with the drivers. So what got us thinking about the need for the park was an absolute critical lack of open space south of Wallan. So developers basically gave you the smallest amount of land they could and the worst amount of land that they could. So it's what's happened is that there's nowhere for kids to go. People look at all the open space of Wallan, but it's all private land. It's all land banked. So although it's a nice vista, you can't go there. There's an increased risk of flood from climate change and urban runoff. And it's only the last year or two, I think, that Melbourne Water's starting to realise what they're in for, because we have a rain event up here. It dumps a lot of water as it comes up off the bay, hits Pretty Sally. It dumps. It all goes down the 5 creeks down to Brunswick, and as I fondly say, Brunswick will be eventually 20 foot underwater if they don't do something. So, yeah, it's a big flood risk. Also, I grew up in a time when people had wild places to go and connect with nature close by. You didn't have to go away for the Easter to see them. So, yeah, wild places. I'm a big believer in kids just being able to go out and test themselves in the wild. Obviously, it's not real wild, but it's wild for them. So, it's also the bio corridor I mentioned before. There's endangered species that use that corridor. On my property, I've had growling grass frogs. I've seen an Australasian bittern on the dam. So it does serve a really good purpose. Just to give you a context, I'm at the headwaters of Merri Creek, halfway up Pretty Sally. So there's also an economic opportunity. We have Werribee treatment plant, which is well known and probably famous Australia-wide for bird watchers, but also worldwide. We have visitors come there from all over the place. It's not a big stretch to think that if we can restore these wetlands, and it's on a railway line, we can get people who've come interstate, international, to visit Werribee, would then include the Wallan wetlands. It's also it's offset the dismal level of urban growth. And I'm thinking that the people in Spring Street have got no idea what they're delivering. And one of the things, as a concerned local citizen, is that if we have the number of people that we are planned to have here, then the people that come here will be coming in desperation. It's cheap. It won't be a nice place to live. It'll just be cheap. So one of my favourite sayings is that we want to make this a destination, not a desperation. Okay, so we get to the where is it slide. So it's straight out of the feasibility study. And what this shows is the potential location of the regional park. And the yellow is the park, and the purple down the bottom is Murrumbaba, which is a recently announced regional park to the south, and that creates a link to the parkland further down the Merri. So you can see from that photo or that map that it actually highlights what we're trying to achieve. You have down the west end, which is your left, you have the Calcalo Creek and the connecting vegetation up through onto the old Sydney Road and Wallan. That covers the west, and it's embraced around the north and the east, so that all the development will be in the middle. So it provides an opportunity for everybody to be not that far from really significant wildlife corridors and wild places. So it's a great opportunity. I can't. Is there anybody who knows how to get the pointer working on this? Because I had it working this afternoon, but it's not working.
Rob, there'll
good.
be.
Oh, that's because you've got it. That's right.
I'm sorry, and I don't think even the version I'm using will be able to create a pointer. So
that's all right.
you have to do it like by saying, yeah, by description.
Yeah. Yeah, well, roughly you can see in the middle there with all the blue, they're the wetlands. You've got Fern Swamp on the right. On the left, you've got Burrumbullock and Mead Swamp at the middle. You can see the various creeks running up to the north, and obviously the Merri and the Calcalo Creek running south. So you can also see the volcanic cones. The two major ones in the park are Spring Hill and Mount Fraser. And further south in Murrumbaba, you have a connection to Bald Hill, which is another volcanic cone there. So, yeah. Next slide. Unfortunately, I put this in here. I was going to get rid of it, and I thought, no, this is a good example of why we need to have strategic planning. This is the BIFT, which is a beverage intermodal freight terminal. This is a schematic of what it will look like when it's fully completed, and that covers Camoola Swamp pretty much, and ingresses very clearly onto the Hern Swamp and quite close to the Merri. So yeah, it's it's disappointing. It could have been a lot better than that. There's 600 hectares. I'm sure they could have found some way of doing it without having that sort of environmental footprint. And we are meeting with the BIFT people a week or two, I believe. So I think it's the 22nd, Yasmin, is it? So it would be good to get their take on it. So yeah, what I want to cover now is more the features and outcomes. So people can actually identify with what are the key features. So you've got volcanic cones, I mentioned those, wetlands, creeks, a lot of First Nation heritage. It's on a scale that is hard to imagine, and it's definitely not acknowledged very publicly. But if you can imagine, before they drained the swamps, you've got basically 700 or 800 hectares of wetlands, and you've got wildlife everywhere. You'd have potentially freshwater mussels, you'd have birds, you'd have kangaroos, you'd have all sorts of grasses and verbiage that could be eaten and woven. So there is going to be a lot of First Nation heritage. There's stony ridges and rises all through there. So if you look around where the wetlands are, all around the edges there's stony rises. You can envisage the Aboriginals sitting there as a group and setting up camp for many, many months while the food was plentiful. So yeah, it's a very, very potentially sacred place, and it's an opportunity to actually acknowledge that heritage. There's also some European heritage. We'll cover a bit of that later. I won't steal all that thunder. The vistas, as Adrian would attest, are magnificent. Just to see the volcanic cones and the wetlands on such a scale. Now, I'm guessing many of you probably don't live in the city, but for anybody who lives further down, you don't get those large-scale visits. Environmentally significant landscapes I've covered off, and one of the things that is a big part of actually making it accessible to people is the network of trails. So I'll cover that a bit later as well. So the volcanic cones we've covered off on Mount Fraser and Spring Hill. There will be links to Green Hill in the Wallan Township and to Bald Hill in Murrumbaba Regional Parkland. So all of those will be linked through the park, and you'll be able to walk or ride to any of those from anywhere in the park. So that I see as a big positive. There's such a lot of planning to be done as to how that all works, but yeah, first thing is to get it acknowledged. So we've covered that. So that's just a map, or yes, keep going, yep. So forward again, yep. So I mentioned Old Sydney Road before. There's significant remnant vegetation all the way along Old Sydney Road, and another bit of it along a stretch of what's called Rose Lane, which would border the park. So Old Sydney Road, for those who haven't been up it, is a magnificent drive once you get past probably Craigieburn. No, not Craigieburn, Calcallo. As it rises up the ridge, you get magnificent views both ways. Along the edge there, because it is a dirt road mostly, like you have with railway lines, there's not a lot of maintenance there, and you've got fantastic remnant vegetation, orchids and any number of herbaceous shrubs and whatever, so lilies. So that's well worth preserving, and the park would include at least the east portion of that, and the west is still farmland anyway, so hopefully that stays that way. Yep. Okay, I mentioned trails before. So there's an opportunity to actually have all the creeks up up this way, linking down to the Merri, and the Merri linking down all the way to the Yarra, down to the Yarra Trail. And then you turn around and go the other way. And I don't know how many are aware of it, but there's a Bendigo to Heathcote rail trail, and when I was on council, we were looking to fund the Heathcote to Wallan end of the trail. Now that's going to take years, but my grandkids, I would hope, would be able to ride from Bendigo to Melbourne, maybe not in a day, but it's all connected. So a great way to get out and experience the environment. I've touched on the BioLink. This really gives you an idea of how it works. So you've got all the way from Craigieburn right the way down, you've got BioLinks. Turning up to the west is up through Beveridge and up the Old Sydney Road ridgeline, and then to the east you've got it through Merriang and the beautiful Merri Creek red gums along there. That if you've been up Merriang Road, you will have seen them. And we are trying to get access to one of the properties there to be able to get some seed and try to get local provenance red gums, because I would imagine that these wetlands would have been covered with red gums originally. So that's the BioLink, and what we're missing there is that actually once you're over Pretty Sally, you're out of Wurundjeri country, you're into Tangerang, and you've got all the north flowing streams connected to right through to the Yarra. Okay, I'll hand over to Yasmin for this one.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yeah, I just have a couple of little quick slides. Yeah, so a really important feature of the parkland is that it will, you know, being part of the Victorian volcanic plain, of course, there's awesome biodiversity still remaining right throughout the whole of the area that the parkland will exist on. But of course, we know, like we're in the northern growth corridor, like the western growth corridor, which I'm sure a lot of everyone here also focuses on. The growth that is to occur will be taking out areas of plains grassland, plains grassy woodland, and seasonal herbaceous wetlands. And all of these communities will be preserved in where they do exist within the parkland. And because of the extensive growth throughout the whole of that northern growth corridor and now right the way up to Wallan, you know, the parkland really will be a last sort of reserve for these really important threatened vegetation communities that are so such an identity for this region. In particular, the seasonal herbaceous wetlands at the top there, Hern Swamp is a great example of remnant seasonal herbaceous wetland, and it provides a really great opportunity to see a huge amount of that community reinstated in the north on the Merri Creek. Yeah, we still, Rob mentioned Merriang, and yeah, the photo there is from Merriang of the plains grassy woodlands. And yeah, so we're really we haven't been able to really explore and see all of the region that will be covered by the parkland. Some of it occurs on private land, and especially where there are wetland areas, you know, they were drained quite early on, but we know that when you do add water, amazing things occur. So you know, it could be really, really special. The parkland will also, of course, the whole of the Merri Creek and the region still does support a lot of threatened flora and fauna. In this case, the growling grass frog is extensive along the Merri Creek still. Obviously, all the wetlands will well, when they fill, they still do provide habitat for water birds, and the potential there is just amazing. Just even some of the man-made wetlands that occur close to where these wetlands could be reinstated or are providing great habitat for birds, and they're man-made wetlands. So reinstating these natural ones, which would see a little bit more of a natural wetting and drying cycle, would be amazing. The region is also well known for golden sun moth, and these are just really focusing on the threatened species, not to mention, just the non-threatened species. So that is very important. And just touching briefly on some of the flora that would be protected, the railway line is still a great repository for some really excellent threatened flora, including swamp everlasting and swamp fireweed. That photo isn't either of those. Thanks. I think Michael's on this meeting. And also, of course, matted flax lily. So they're just a couple. But yeah, I'll hand back to you, Rob.
Absolutely. Just to pick up on that too before we touch on the next one, but the picture of the spoonbill there just highlights the diversity that's taken on an old stag tree next to my dam, and that's at the headwaters of Strathhead. So you can see that we get quite a few coming through, and just also highlight the fact that when we did look at Burrumbullock, when we were doing the planning panel evaluation of the quarry, Louisa McMillan, Claudia James and myself saw 2 magpie geese in the old Hannah swamps at Burrumbullock. So they still come. So you can imagine if you just add water, as Yasmin said, it's going to be fantastic. Okay, we talked about European history. There are 3 significant homesteads and buildings in the park. Over on Mariang Road, you've got, and you can see the arrows pointing. I wish I had my pointer there, but the right 2 photos point down to near Mariang Road on the Merri. The top photo is of Wallan homestead, which was built around the early 1900s, late 1800s, and that's listed by the National Trust. And Quinn's Cottage is Ned Kelly's grandparents' house, and rumour has it that he was actually born there. And I don't know a lot about Camula Homestead, but that's already been saved as I understand it, and that will be somehow fit in with the BIFT. How, I've got no idea. So Wurundjeri values, I'm going to hand back to Yasmin.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so we obviously, the region would have had great value to Wurundjeri, but luckily we have, because of the growth area situation, we have some cultural values studies which have been undertaken by Wurundjeri. So they have provided some of the values that they've identified in the landscape, and they have also been provided with some funding from the state government to do some mapping of stony rises, which they've identified to be highly significant areas, and consistently linked with cultural heritage remains. So this map just really shows some of the stony rise mapping that has been undertaken throughout the region. The purple, the green lines underneath are the areas of Aboriginal cultural heritage sensitivity, and then the purple areas are those areas that have had cultural values studies undertaken. And some of the important cultural values that have been identified have been the landforms, particularly including stony rises and volcanic ridges, the waterways, including, and they're sort of keen to emphasise, named and unnamed waterways. Get talking in state government speak there. And particularly, there's been a lot of drainage throughout this region. And so it's acknowledgement of the former natural waterways that are important, obviously, because they are, the area hadn't been drained, but, that they are where people went to the natural drainage, the natural waterways and those patterns in the landscape. So it's important that we really look at those more natural landscapes. So places such as Burrumbullock, Strathade Creek, Taylor's Creek, and Green Hill, and that's sort of pertaining more to the Wallan and Beveridge cultural landscape area. In general, habitats for remnant native plant species and food bowls for native animals. That's how they're described. So I really love that description. And also, importantly, the lines of view to pre-European wetlands, waterways, and also I think it really acknowledges the fact that this landscape is very much about views. It's you get on the top of a volcanic cone and you get a great view across the landscape. You can see all the wetlands and the plains. It's quite an evocative landscape, and I think these cultural values that Wurundjeri have provided really, really share that. Thanks, Rob. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. So we'll cover off. We've skipped, have we? So it's probably a good idea, actually. So protecting the southern catchments. So we talked before about flood mitigation, and an important part of this whole exercise is to make sure that the waters that do come down the Merri are not only graduated and don't create a lot of flooding, they also have a quality that enables the environment to thrive all the way down to the Yarra. And I think that's a huge importance to not just the Merri, but also to the Yarra. And if we're to get a lot of the native fishes getting back into the smaller streams, then we have to include measures that provide filtration for the water. And that's what I see this doing with the wetlands. Next slide. And this is more of the same. So 1 in 100-year floods could become 1 in 20 years. And climate change is going to be upon us, or it is already upon us. But what we don't see happening is factoring in 5 times the amount of runoff from the hard surfaces. And that's an official figure from Melbourne Water and Yarra Valley Water. They estimate that you get 5 times the runoff. So if we already have what looks like restored wetlands after normal rains, you throw in a lot of hard surfaces and we're going to have flooding. That water is going to get down south very quickly without some means of spreading it out and restoring those wetlands. And what we don't want is manufactured wetlands or just sterile retarding basins. We want real wetlands for the environment. Okay, so we're getting towards the end, and I just want to cover off on the fact that the state government's moving ahead with the housing, employment and industrial projects for the region. A bit slower on the infrastructure to support all that, but yeah, it's getting there. And as I said and alluded to earlier, the Victorian Planning Authority, and they've been renamed. They keep changing the names so people don't remember them. But they're given for each precinct. They're told by the government that this precinct we expect you to provide. In Northwest Beveridge, I think it's 55 or 60,000 houses. That's their template. There's no land evaluation to see whether it can take that. They're given a figure, and that's happened all the way up the valley. So what we want to do is make sure that when they're doing all this planning, we have a commitment from the government so that when the planning is being undertaken, there's a commitment to a regional park that they have to take into account. At the moment, they are probably looking at it and making some allowances for it. But push comes to a shove and the developer doesn't like it, they can still backtrack on that. So what we're after, the Alliance, and this was pretty much a consensus right across all the groups, was we're looking for a commitment from the state government to deliver the park. Now, we understand that the budgets aren't balancing terribly well for the government at the moment. So if we can get them to give a commitment to the park, then that gets included in all of the planning and all of the future development in the area. So it future-proofs it, doesn't deliver it straight away. Probably won't get delivered in my lifetime, but what you've got to do is look long term, and as soon as the land's gone for development, it's you never get it back. So that's what we're looking for, that commitment. And second, we're looking for funding to deliver the parkland, and whether that's long-term funding or some sort of plan to do it over many years. We need a budget to start the initial work, and that can be, it probably comes as no surprise, but it does to me, but there's been no hydrology evaluation of the catchment. So they actually don't know how the catchment behaves in a hydrological sense. And there's no forecast for how it will behave. So what's happened is that all of that hydrology is done at a precinct level. And as we all know, catchments don't work at that level. So it's absolutely imperative that we get the budget to start the establishment of the park. And that covers off on the last one as well. So one of the things that concerns me too is that because it is such a rich area for First Nations people, that they're not going to be able to deliver on a lot of it. And I feel that the Wurundjeri Council will be under a lot of pressure to bend to developers on that. So yeah, that's what we're looking for at the moment. And we have at the moment got a petition going. So there's a connection to our website. And that is a parliamentary petition, and it will be presented by Rod Spence on our behalf. And we're looking to get 10,000 signatures, and we're got a good start, but we've still got a long way to go. So the more you can push that out there to your networks, it's just getting onto the website and putting your name and email, etc., in there. And it will make a huge difference to the environmental status of the northern region. Questions?
Rob, thank you so much. That was, and Yasmin, it's well argued and relentless in its good sense, as it were, as well as just being heartfelt, I suppose. So it's great to hear that sort of level of discussion and analysis of why this really is a park that should happen. I find it amazing that there's no hydrological assessment of the region. I know Milton East PSP happened last year, and I was involved in part of that, as was Yasmin. And the mapping that they produced from that just showed it to be like the most extraordinary pre-settlement wonderland. It is quite astounding that that's not happening. Is it something that's incredibly complex to actually produce? Is it
if you want my take on it, it would delay the PSPs.
Yeah, well, that's therein lies the rub, doesn't it? Because
So
yes,
the PSPs are driving it. They want housing, they want income. So every house sold, they've got stamp tax,
yes,
stamp duty. So yeah, I think that's it. What the Melbourne Water have done is basically said for each precinct structure plan that within that precinct they have to maintain all the water or retain all the water in that precinct. Now, that's like wishing for a fairy godmother. Catchments don't work that way. What you have from one catchment gets held in another catchment, not catchment, precinct. So, you can't actually have each precinct retaining all of its water. It's just not going to happen. Some of the precincts up here are hilly and they get a lot of flow. How do you retain it there? Where you retain it is on the flat plains areas. So, yeah, it's simplistic and stupid.
yes, and it fails to understand the scale of things, doesn't it? So, we much more regional level approach needs to occur first. We have the same ongoing thing right now in near Avalon Airport, where there's development fast-tracked by the minister and going through a VPA process, and the hydrological assessments there are thoroughly inadequate, even though they're going to deluge water into the bay and affect seagrass meadows and Ramsar wetlands and things like that. So yes, it's the west, the north, yes, and it's these areas, I think, between the urban growth boundary and the peri-urban areas that get overlooked. Really, they're like these no person's land somehow. It's not Melbourne, so it's not important kind of thing.
Well,
it is precisely the most important part of Melbourne, because yes, the good voters.
Yeah, and I think too. I noticed there's a few hands up, so I won't say much. But if you look at the east, they've already developed all that there. The last chance to make some environmental impact at a national scale is north and west.
Yes,
Greenfields.
Yeah.
So,
Debbie, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, just looking at the mapping and overlaying it on what's already there. They've already built a huge amount of houses in a swamp. I would have thought you can't do that. Like, especially with all the events we're having currently. And I mean, Flemington is a classic example in the middle of Melbourne that flooded recently, and many houses in an area that never were flooded before have flooded, and I think they're all liable, to be honest. I would not want to be having my house in the middle of that swamp, and I don't think people understand that. So especially now, because of the rainfall events we get due to global warming, they're extremely violent, and there's a lot at once. So, and all the runoff surfaces, I'd be horrified if I was building in a swamp. It's going to happen. You can't drain it and keep it out all the time. So
it's like adding bricks to a bath. The water's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So
that housing development was approved by the planning minister about 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
So he overrode council, and that used to be the old Wallan airfield. And I remember driving past it in my youth and seeing planes land on the airstrip when it was surrounded by water. So yeah, it's very ill-advised.
approved 30
hopefully
years
we've
ago, but only built in the last.
Well,
Two-
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well, it was
know,
rezoned. It was rezoned. As soon as you rezone it as residential, the council's screwed. They can't.
it's a, I would have thought the conveyancing officers would have picked up that it's in a swamp, that you know, it's only going to, like, the rest of the swamp here is still there. They're in the middle of a bit of a swamp. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
A bit of history too there. Wallan used to come under the Goulburn Valley water. Don't ask me why. It was because I don't think Melbourne Water wanted to come this far north. And I'm not sure that Goulburn Water actually came over the Great Dividing Range and had a look at it. So I think it just got a tick. So it should have been picked up at that stage, even with the planning minister's tick.
Yeah. It is a testament to how far forward you have to think when you're doing planning and so on. Stephen Reed, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I just want to congratulate you for the team for getting to this stage, because you've obviously done a lot of work. But and also just want to, it's sort of more of a comment than anything else. You showed all those cultural heritage sites, the Indigenous cultural heritage sites, particularly in the image you showed. There was quite a lot in Beveridge, where there's lots of new housing developments happening. And I mean, those cultural heritage sites are becoming isolated pockets of biodiversity because they can build, they're sort of being left with parks around them, sort of Kaikuyu parks around them, but the rocky knolls themselves are not allowed to be built on or even really touched. And I guess there's two things. A, you know, what you said about the First Peoples having pressure just sort of to look the other way. I think that's already happening, which is a huge shame. But also I see that there could be an opportunity, if there's will at the developer level and council level, to provide those, instead of putting Kaikuyu right up to the edge of the cultural heritage site, actually giving them a little bit more space and connecting them all together, because there's sort of an opportunity for you know, Mitchell Council in particular to create some bio corridors that link the two sides of your park together through these cultural heritage sites. Because at the moment they're going to be very difficult to maintain, because they've just sorry, I'm getting myself upset because I know how these spaces are being treated, and they're being treated incredibly poorly. But anyway, is there conversation? I guess my question is there conversation at the local government level with how these spaces that by law have to be left, but could potentially be connected through parks as a sort of a bio link between cutting through every.
Unfortunately, sorry, Stu. Unfortunately, the council isn't the planning authority.
Yeah,
it's the VPA.
The reason why I'm saying that is because I know one of those parks very intimately, because I designed it, and I tried my hardest to create that cultural heritage site and widen it out to fill the whole park. And the Mitchell Council were terrified at the level of maintenance that was going to require, and basically forced me to tighten my line around the cultural heritage site and forced me to create Kaikuyu sort of desert all the way around that cultural heritage site, because they were terrified of the level of maintenance. And they basically said, our mower guys don't know how to maintain it. And I was like, well, don't let your mower guys maintain it. Let your environmental guys maintain it. Anyway, I have a very close relationship with those, and it was local government. It was Mitchell Council that forced me to change my design from a beautiful biodiverse landscape to being it was New Park in oh god, it was a few years ago now. Someone's just asked me what park it was. It was in Beveridge. It's New Park Road in Lyra. If you want to go and have a look, there's a beautiful little cultural heritage site to the west end, and it's just going to be completely covered in weeds very soon. Sorry, that was just me having a bit of a whinge, but there's so much potential in that space.
Well, you do bring up the economics of the matter, don't you? And the fact that often local councils are ill-equipped to deal with matters of this scale, and that's why organisations like Merri Creek Management Committee and perhaps councillors with a larger vision like Rob and so on can actually step in, and we can get some more state and preferably federal sort of funding for this sort of vision too, I suppose. David Unwin, you have your hand up. And you're on mute.
Hello. There we go. Thanks. I was driving for most of it, but I'm at home now, and I've sort of caught up on a few of the pictures and that. You talked about river red gums and a lot of flora species to get in there. And since I've been listening, I've been hitting all my yarra gum resources, and I'd love to see you get some yarra gums in there too, because it's prime yarra gum habitat and it's critically endangered.
Right. Thanks for that. I wasn't aware of that.
Yes. It's been a little passion project of mine for the last 12 months, so I can give you as much information as you need about yarra gums.
Yeah, well, if you can send some of that through to me. Adrian has my email address there.
Sure, thank you.
That'd be great, thanks. Yep.
Please put any question. If you don't want to speak up aloud, please chuck it in the chat. Otherwise, pester Rob and Yasmin verbally. Otherwise, you'll have to hear me ask the long list of questions that I've got, because it's been there's so much. You mentioned the dynamiting of what was it, the creation of an outfall to Merri Creek using dynamite?
So about 10,000 years ago, I think it was. It could be out by a factor of 10. Mount Fraser erupted. And it actually filled the valley with lava, and it flowed obviously to the lowest spots, and up this way is, once you get past the flat area, it falls away, and it took the lava with it. So it plugged up that valley with lava, and that's what caused originally all of the wetlands. Because if you look at down where, say, Hern Swamp is, bedrock's about, I don't know, 5 meters down. It's a basalt plain, basically. And it's filled over the millennia with silts and whatever. So in about 1940, 1939, they got some dynamite and unplugged the lava flow at an appropriate point so that it actually drained. It didn't drain it very, very quickly, but it just meant it wouldn't hold it over 6 months. It would dissipate probably over weeks. So, you know, that's happened in fairly recent memory. It was before 1940, you would have had Hern Swamp. As you saw in that sketch of the railway there, it's flooded all the time in winter. So, but we still get that flood coming, and you know, my family knows that as soon as it rains for any length of time, I'm off in my 4x4 and up the top of Green Hill taking photos. So it still happens. But
is that something that can be reversed, Rob?
I wouldn't see why not. And that's whether that's the same spot that you reverse it or not, or whether there's better options. But I mentioned people who have given a lot to this campaign, and Nature Glenelg Trust, Mark Backman. I'm not sure if many people are aware of them, but they're probably one of the foremost wetland restoration groups in Australia. And Mark's taken an interest in this from quite some time ago. And he's done some LiDAR research on it, and he's presented to planning panels about it. So he would have the view that you're not going to restore the whole of Hern Swamp. Obviously, you've got buildings in a lot of it, but it's going to be fragmented. So instead of 600 hectares, you might have a 200 or 300 hectare parcel connected to 100 and so on. But they all have to be big enough to be viable in their own right. So getting that restoration done for Herne Swamp as a whole is unlikely, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. So I'd love to just plug it up and see what happens.
Yes, indeed. And at 600 hectares, it must have been, well, I don't know how big Cooey Rup Swamp was. That was the largest in Victoria that we drained. But at 600 hectares, it must be still one of the largest, largest around.
Yeah, and it's since European settlement, it's been acknowledged as a wetland of significance, the bird life and everything. So yeah, it'd be good to restore some of it, that's for sure. So I didn't mention when I was talking about the park that it's actually the proposal from the feasibility study is potentially 3,000 hectares, which to get your head around that, and coming back to a question before about where Stephen mentioned, I think it was Stephen, about connecting all these. If you look at the maps, that's what we've tried to do, is we've tried to connect everything and not have this just disjointed approach. So, and from a council's point of view, and that was one of the things when I was on council we had to cover was they're not going to have to foot the bill. It's going to be the Victorian government that maintains it. So they're all for it. They're backing us all the way. So it's one of their advocacies. So yeah.
Is it only Mitchell Shire that's affected by this vision?
No, it's in Whittlesea as well. So the BIFT is actually in Whittlesea.
Yes.
So Murrumbaba, which is the new regional park, is Whittlesea and Hume. And north of that is predominantly Whittlesea.
And are they equally on board?
That's a hard question because they've had administrators on and off over the years. So it's originally they were. We got a commitment from the then CEO to agreement in principle to the idea. So, but that's going back quite a few years now. So it's been a smorgasbord of administrators since then.
Yeah. Okay. Yasmin.
Oh, I was just going to add, there's a tiny bit in Hume as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Down in the bottom corner. Yeah.
Yep.
John Dill Pratt, you have your hand up.
Well, Calcallo's the Calcallo Creek's in Hume.
Yep.
Yeah, below Guns Gully.
And home to the amazing Calcallo grassland and so on too. We love Calcallo in all its forms. John Dill Pratt.
Adrian, this may be completely off the mark, but can this bear any on the MSA at all? The requirement for grassy woodland through the MSA?
Oh, that's a very good question. I suppose there's two sides to that. One, most of this is outside the urban growth boundary, but Yasmin can talk about that a bit. But we also have the grassy eucalypt woodland, which is really not quite in this area, but there's still grassy eucalypt woodland in this area that probably should be could be contained within the MSA, I reckon. Yasmin?
Yeah, so it does include MSA area. Yeah, it is within the MSA, most of it.
Right.
It sits outside the grassy eucalypt woodland reserve, intended reserve area. But yeah, a lot of the the potential conservation areas have already been fixed. It's not it's not. I don't think there's a huge potential for additional grassy eucalypt woodland protection. And there is some grassy eucalypt woodland, and that is mainly along the proposed Parkland extent. Some of it, and it links with some that is just sitting down in the Marambaba regional parklands as well. So there might not really be much extra potential for protection of grassy eucalypt woodlands, unfortunately.
But just to clarify too, since we're talking in acronyms sometimes, the Melbourne Strategic Assessment is the deal that was done in 2010 to protect some areas of the important areas within the urban growth boundary, but sacrificing all the rest to the developers for the sake of purchasing the Western Grassland Reserve and this still mythical grassy eucalypt woodland reserve. And grassy eucalypt woodland's important because it's federally listed, so it is it brings in the big guys, as it were. It's and as well, seasonal herbaceous wetland is too. So, and this must be one of the largest, most. I don't know how. What I suppose is it very degraded? Like a lot of this, it's farming lands. I know seasonal herbaceous wetlands great in that you can restore it fairly easily compared to a grassland. But can you talk about that a bit, Yasmin or Rob?
I'll just quickly say a little bit about the seasonal herbaceous wetlands and the Melbourne Strategic Assessment process. After the initial Melbourne Strategic Assessment process, I suppose, where they set down all the rules and decided, which areas they were going to allow to be cleared, and then which areas would provide the offsets in essence for the clearing. Then seasonal herbaceous wetlands was listed as a community, and so the federal government was sort of tapped on the shoulder and sort of made aware that a new community would be relevant to this area that they'd already sort of made the rules around. So they asked the state government to do all the possible areas that could contain seasonal herbaceous wetlands within the growth areas. And they did a very questionable assessment, in my opinion. And the only place they found an amount of seasonal herbaceous wetland that they deemed significant enough to be taken back out of a developable area was Hearns Swamp, was a portion of Hearns Swamp, a 55-hectare area. And that was the only, that was the size they deemed worthy enough to be taken back out of the developable parts of the growth areas. There were plenty of 10-hectare sites, but so they identified, even through a very, quite a detailed process, they identified that at least 55 hectares of viable seasonal herbaceous wetlands was present back then, and that was even without adding water. So the potential is definitely there.
Just on that too, the reason it's only 55 hectares is that was the then boundary of the urban growth zone.
Oh, yeah.
So when you had the logical inclusion, which included Wallan, they didn't upgrade the environmental aspects of that, and they didn't do an extension to the corridor plan. So there's been no evaluation of Wallan's wetlands whatsoever.
That's an extraordinary oversight, isn't it? That's logical.
It's not an oversight
because the developers jumped up and down and said, no, we should be included in the urban growth boundary so we can make lots of money. but they didn't bother to do the environmental work that would accompany that.
And it hasn't been to the federal government environment minister either.
No. Okay.
So it hasn't got federal sign off.
Well, sorry, what hasn't?
The logical inclusion, which is all the Wallan bit of the urban growth
Oh.
zone,
Really?
hasn't been submitted to the federal environment minister for sign off.
Okay. That's an interesting matter, isn't it? One day I want like 20 lawyers just at my beck and call so we can just cause grief on all of this stuff.
I'd like the bank account to pay for them.
Yes, well, that's right, indeed. So everybody listening, when you yes, give all your money to Rob immediately. So yeah, that's what it comes down to. Are there any more questions? We're getting on towards 8 o'clock, so we better wind up. It's is there pressing matters going?
I just want to
Oh,
say
David.
congratulations and well done on like getting it as far as you've got it so far. It's really impressive, and it gives others hope that we might be able to make a difference.
Thanks, David.
Rob, have you got any excursions planned at this stage, or is that going to happen this year?
Sorry, I missed that.
Excursions. Have you got anything planned for this year or later this year, or ideas for?
Yeah. The Alliance is planning to have regular tours to particular spots where you can see particular features of the park, and that we're aiming at about 10, including obviously Green Hill, but probably a minibus or a fleet of cars, and we'll take people around and we'll talk to the various sites and that. And we still haven't got the details of that, but I'd like to get that probably monthly.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we will make sure we advertise that on our GPN channels, as it were, just so that everyone here can get a hold. Deb.
Have I got this right that Wallan was never included in the MSA area? Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Well,
So-
it wasn't. It's that stage. It wasn't in the
Yeah.
urban growth zone.
No, I understand that, but so then it's irrelevant. All the stuff we need to do, we need to fight to say to the federal government that they're just making plans without any assessments, and it's disgraceful. You can't do that. It's just blatantly obvious to me. It was never included. It's never been assessed properly. It needs to be done. The feds
Yep.
need to realise that.
Yeah, and it's with the hydrology survey too.
Nuts.
It's one of those. How can you actually do all this
Yeah.
planning?
Why can't we highlight to them that they're developing an area that hasn't been assessed properly at all?
Yeah, that it's been highlighted, but deafening
We should be
silence.
prosecuting the state government. Like, it's
Yeah, it's like
wrong.
another letter to the
I
minister.
don't understand. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you just need to keep barraging that they have not done their due diligence at all. And we
At the
already
moment-
don't have an MSA area that works anyway. We haven't bought our grasslands, so it's a failure. And they're just blatantly developing area without doing due diligence. It's disgraceful and it shouldn't be happening.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't do it, but we need to highlight a lot of this to somebody that this is wrong, very wrong.
Yeah, the logical inclusions process is a bit mysterious, but just to reiterate that most of the area up towards Wallan is part of the North Growth area, but yeah, not to take away the fact that the logical inclusions area hasn't received adequate focus. That's for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that illogical note, as it were, the illogic of the logical inclusions, we will leave this and hope that the good sense will prevail and that this vision that should come to manifest will come to manifest with thanks to Yasmin and Rob for such a articulate and forceful case. Yes. So thank you both for coming along. It's 7:56, so we'll take 9 minutes. I'll see you all at 5 minutes past 8, and we'll get on with our regular GPN meeting.
I'll have to go, Adrian. So thank you, everybody, for your questions and your attention and your passion. It's great to be able to present to people who actually understand the values. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, everyone. And
Thanks,
in
Yaz.
your little break, consider signing the petition and sharing with your networks as well. That'd be
Yes.
awesome.
Well, you share that screen while you
Oh,
yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
put the screen up.
yeah.
Okay, I
Okay.
will.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.